when the church was established, they actually used Menkaperatu temple as a church. So again, if the temple was supposed to be so pagan and heathen, one has to ask, why use it as a church? Now, one of the times, this is the first time we're starting to see the Serapis Jesus. This Serapis was started during the time when the Greeks, after Alexander's death, his generals took over like Sulla I. It was during the Ptolemaic period that they started to take over and was here for 300 years. And they started to study the salvation and resurrection. And who is the salvation and resurrection personified as? Ashra. Okay. So studying this, when they came to the throne, they took and made and simulated a star into their Greek god named Serapis.
I'm gonna stop right there. So give a little back history and kind of bring it forward to because my main question that I'm asking to myself is, what's the overall purpose of the Greeks doing this, taking these Egyptian gods and amalgamating these different gods together and creating their own? But if you don't know about Serapis, basically Serapis was a Greek god that was created during the Ptolemaic rule of Egypt, and Serapis was a mixture of Asar and Apis the bull, Serapis. That's how the name comes together. And Ptolemy himself, he wanted to be seen as a god, and he started calling himself Ptolemy the First, Mariam Setep and Ra. And the Egyptians basically wasn't going for it. The Egyptians were not trying to see Ptolemy as a god. They weren't trying to rock with Ptolemy as a god. So in turn, they took these Egyptian concepts of gods, of these deities, and they created their own, and they created this Serapis. And this Serapis is one of the earlier Christ figures. And if I believe correctly, Serapis would have predated what we know as Jesus, as far as people worshiping Jesus in mass. So you will have Serapis first and then Jesus, because even if you look at it, they look at the followers of Serapis as Christians, and they say it's related to Christianity. So it's one of the earlier Christian deities or Christ figures that the Greeks created. So that's a quick synopsis on the backstory of Serapis. And like he said, they ruled it for like 300 years. And that was pretty much the last dynasties in Egypt before the Romans took over. But you want to add something to that?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So my thought process is, well, why did the Greeks do this? Now, this is also a setup to what we're going to get to later, is how does this affect us now? So I'm thinking, okay, but he kind of explained it, and I kind of said it too. Well, neither one of us kind of said it. We said it. Ptolemy wanted the Egyptians to view him as a god. When they came in and they conquered, they were ruling. They took the indigenous Egyptian religions and they stripped them of them. So going back to what we was talking about yesterday, why is our history hidden? Well, our history is hidden so they can maintain dominance. And this is in the religious sphere. So they took this information, they hid it from the people, and they gave them back what they wanted, or they gave them back a Greek version or their own version of what they took from the Egyptians. And it was for control. At the end of the day, it was for control. It was to maintain control. It was to have control. It was to make sure that the people saw Ptolemy and any other ruler of the Ptolemaic rule, see them as a god, because that's how they wanted to be viewed, because they felt dominant like that. So in a nutshell.
Yeah. And it to me, it goes along into the narrative of them creating critical thinking, them creating knowledge, and them creating advanced forms or higher forms of thinking and things like that. Because again, when we're talking about things coming out of Egypt, another one of the things that came out of Egypt was the Egyptian mysteries, which is critical and the foundation of early human concepts regarding mathematics, physics, critical thinking, world design, astrology,
all the sciences,
all of
everything we
things,
use today.
Right. All of the sciences and everything like that come out of those people that were able to go into the Egyptian mystery school and learn that knowledge and then bring it back out and take it back to their places, and become kind of the purveyors of that knowledge. And we know that those that create the knowledge, those that are viewed as the creators of the knowledge, have a certain level of prestige, authority, and influence over the direction and the way that knowledge is perceived.
Right.
So I would just add that it is tied in, not just in a religious sense, but in the sense of like science and where we are nowadays. You hear people all the time saying white people invented critical thinking and mathematics and this, that, and the third. All
it's
of that
because
comes
of stuff
out of
like this.
Right. All of that comes out of this same vein. And then it goes back to the knowledge of Black history piece that we talked about last week, where if you don't know that your people or people that look like you even have created things that have contributed to the development of the modern world, what is there for you to really be proud and excited about?
Right. But also looking at it from a history and a militaristic point of view, it is, we've conquered these people. We're in control now. We want to maintain control, and I want these people to bow down to me and see me as a god because we've conquered these people. And I'm going to come up with, basically, Ptolemy is like, I'm coming up with a way to get all of these people, because at this time, Egypt has been conquered by several groups of people. So Egypt was just like a grouping of different types of people, different people from different lands at this time, from different nations at this time. So how can I get all these people who now occupy this place, this Alexandria? How can I get these people to believe in me as this God? So I'm going to come up with something that have aspects of each of their ways of believing and put it into one and try to shove it down their throat, basically.
And we see this actually in a lot of the Christian historians, and even some of the ones that are not. I think Dr. John Henry Clarke, if memory serves correctly, said something about how it's Dr. Blyden in his book. The name of the book just went blank.
Not the Underground Railroad. No.
Dr. Blyden. Dr. Blyden did.
I'm way off. I know what you're talking about. I can't think
of
it right now.
Yeah, I gotta look it up now. Dr. Blyden.
I got to look it up too.
Because it's on the PAC's website. Christianity, Islam, and the Negro race. There it is.
Gotcha.
So it's also like Dr. Blyden said in his book, Christianity, Islam, and the Negro race, where he talked about how some of these religions were able to take a firm foothold. Islam in particular was the one he was talking about, was able to take a firmer foothold in Africa because the religion was so fluid and so easily able to be adapted to things that were already familiar, customs, culture, customs and courtesies and cultural practices of the native people. And we see Christianity later on taking on a lot of those same traits of being fluid and being able to be moldable so that it's more digestible, more palatable to people that are being introduced to it, forced into it, whatever word you want to put in front of it. So it all works out the same as from a militaristic standpoint.
Because I need you to believe in this. I need you to believe in this. I need you to accept these ideologies, because this is how I continue my reign. So let's continue.
And made and simulated a star into their Greek god named Serapis. This Serapis, later on when the Byzantine Roman Christians come, this Serapis now becomes, as you look up here, with Jesus, with the sun behind his head. When I said the concept called Sa-Ra, that's why the sun is behind his head, because they were copying this concept. So all those images that you see, in America on the churches of the European Jesus. That is Serapis, that was created at the Conference of Nicaea in 325 AD, and is at these ecumenical conferences is the formulation of the Western version of Christianity.
Stop it right there. So, because that's he's bringing it down, in my opinion, in my head, the way I'm formulating as far as how we use it for today. He's setting the groundwork and bringing it down to how religion is presented to us today in America, specifically Christianity. Is presented to us, imagery, the ideas that go with it, but especially the imagery, because your God needs to look like you. I'm not here to tell people what to believe in, what not to believe in. What I am saying is, as African people who are looking to build ourselves as a people, as a nation, and be able to self-actualize, whatever concepts of gods that we have, whatever concepts of religion or spirituality that we have, the deities must reflect our own reflection. They need to look like us. And right now, the deities don't look like us. The deities need to be Africanized. And even if you don't even want to go with that specific term, Africanized, they need to look like your black self. They need to look like you. And when you're looking at a deity that looks like the group of people who conquered you and dominated you, that's going to give you, going back to what we were talking about last week, that plays into and adds to that inferiority complex. How do you actively conquer or even effectively fight a group of people that subconsciously you have an inferiority complex about? And you may, and this might not, I'm not going to say this for everybody, but you may see these people subconsciously as your deities. So can you really actively or effectively fight these people and really get what you need? Or do you be stuck in the place of begging and hoping and wishing and trying to appeal to senses, to morality, like we were talking about last week?
Yeah, there's a real, and I know for a lot of black people, when you ask them what Jesus looks like, they might not know a lot of the scripture word for word, but they know the description. Skin of bronze, hair like sheep's wool.
Right.
But there's still something to be said for the fact that a lot of the images of Jesus that are presented don't match that description.
Right.
And by and large, people seem to be very dismissive of that. That means something, you know, that has weight on your subconscious. The other thing I will point out is the Council of Nicaea. It's something that people talk about a lot.
They do.
And my take on the Council of Nicaea is a bit different, because I'm always trying to figure out, what can I get out of this? What can I learn from this? So I don't get caught up in the back and forth of, you know, the ongoing debate about, did they create Jesus at this conference, or did they blah, blah, blah. Look, you're going to find people on all sides. Some people say he been existed. The council was just to determine whether or not he was actually the divine son of God. Other people say it was blah, blah, blah. The fact of the matter is, they had a disconnect in the Christian community. They came to the council and they fixed it. They all came to an agreement, and that was the story they rocked with. Now, there were some people that left the council upset. But you don't hear a lot about them.
You know, Arius is, you're gonna hear a lot about the figure Arius, and who, according to history, was speaking out against, especially if we go with the story of the creation of Christ at this. But a Christ concept was created, and Arius was like, nah, this ain't it. But they fixed their problem, because the Romans were, what was Constantine, they was able to link with the Christians. They was able to become Christian. He was, and say, hey, now all of you who are against me, now you on my side, and now my army is stronger.
Right, because we gotta remember, Constantine was a pagan.
Right.
That was trying to that was
trying to conquer the Christians.
Right. He was converting. So the whole argument that we hear, and the only reason I'm harping on this is because I feel like this needs to stop. This debate about the purpose of the Council of Nicaea is good intellectually, but if we actually talking about doing something, we need to look at the outcome more so than what we think happened in the designs of it. The outcome was with the input, a bunch of different opinions and views and disagreements on how to classify Jesus. The output, one unified belief.
And now our army is stronger because everybody who we tried to conquer by force that we couldn't, we were able to conquer them by becoming a part of their religion. And now it's easier to infiltrate and take over these people and rule these people.
And there were a lot of these councils.
Familiar.
Sounds very familiar. But the other thing is there were a lot of these councils. All right, so that's the other part we got to keep in mind.
Nicaea wasn't the only council.
Right. Let's not get hung up on this one. Like, and again, we're in a position now where we can't just, play around and masturbate with the information. We got to be figuring out, okay, how can we use this? What can we do with it?
How does this affect this right now today?
Right. So there, and for those people that enjoy intellectualizing and trying to, because
that's cool. Just go ahead.
We call them. I was gonna say we call them historians, right? That's one part of it. That's one part of being a historian is figuring out the who, what, where, when, and why of past events. All right. So if you want to be on that side doing that, that's cool. But you need to be able to articulate the meaning in a way that people of action, people that actually want to make change, can use. That's the other part of being a historian, is being able to convert these past dates and acquaintances and situations into usable intel.
How is it relevant and how can we use it? Those should be questions we're asking ourselves. Because I was going to say, there's nothing wrong with intellectualizing the information. Just
absolutely not.
Within that process, hopefully you're coming up with some concise thing that we can do, some actionable plan that we can use to utilize the information, because all this information is vital. All this information is important. All of these scholars, these master teachers, they put their blood, sweat, and tears into giving us this information, collecting this information, understanding it. The least we could do is use it. That's just where I'm at. That's just where I'm at.
So you know what I think? I think Black people in America right now, we need to have our own, you call it the Council of Philadelphia or something.
Or whatever, yeah. We do need to have a council.
And we need to come together, and the very first thing we need to figure out is the role of the slave in our history. Like, what did it mean to go through that period of time?
Yeah.
Because that's our genesis. That's our origin story, whether you want to believe it or not. That's where we start as a people in America in this current cultural paradigm that we live in. So what does that mean? How do we relate to that?
I'm gonna say, make sure you put your caveats in there, because they be like, nah, Black people were here before slavery. We know that. That ain't what he's talking about.
Yeah,
that's not what he's talking about. He's saying for this specific current Black American culture that we have today, for the experience that we have today. Yeah. So
we need to define that, just like they define Jesus Christ. We need to define the slave.
There you go. Let's do it.